your feet, start clapping. Got a real good feeling, something bad about to happen.
Good evening and welcome to the Kuhn Academy for the initial installment of AP US History 2014. All right. So to kind of explain a little bit to you, the flipped classroom is a concept where we're going to record some of our notes online to save some class time. I'm trying to keep these around 7 minutes or so, so you can get through it, and then we'll be able to do something with the information in class, okay, as opposed to more class notes. So tonight we're going to talk about Bacon's Rebellion, and this is anticipation for our debate on Monday. All right. So if we look at this map here of European settlement in 1760, so this is a good 160 years after the settlements have occurred from England. You'll notice we have some settlers here, okay, which are the English, and then you'll notice some Scotch-Irish out over here, okay. Anytime you have these two different cultures, kind of, and they're very similar cultures, but with them living side by side like that, conflict is ripe to happen, okay. And that's really the root of this conflict here, is what we call the backcountry out here in Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, everything out up to the mountains is the backcountry, and then you kind of have your coastal areas in here. All right, and then in Virginia, they actually use the phrase the tidewater for this area because this is where the tide goes out for the James and New York rivers. All right, and then once you hit Richmond is where the waterfalls are, and that starts the backcountry from there. All right. So by 1670, we got 40,000 colonists in the Chesapeake. All right, so that's about Mundelein plus 10,000 people, okay, are in this whole region, all right? New immigrants and indentured servants were expected because we need indentured labor to work these plantations and tobacco crops and things like that. Problem was, tobacco prices were pretty low because these farmers were very successful and able to grow so much of it, okay? Well, low prices happened from an oversupply, okay? And then the land in Virginia is starting to become more and more valuable because people want to be these tobacco farmers. So it costs a lot of money, but we're not able to make that money back selling the tobacco. So we start to see some bad economic situations starting to occur here. All right. Now, for Bacon's Rebellion begins with the Indians. This is not the Indians fighting each other. They actually caused this, but it's really two groups of Europeans fighting each other. So the Indians took the hogs for unpaid debt from some of the farmers living out here in the backcountry. Okay, and then some other Indians got involved in the feud, and the backcountry farmers, which are these old indentured servants that got this land out on the frontier, okay, teamed up from Virginia and Maryland, and they attacked the Indian villages back in return, okay, for taking the hogs. All right, so it starts this big, huge conflict here. Well, being Europeans and living in Virginia, these colonists expected protection against the Indians, okay, but the reason that the rich people on the coast were sending them out there was because they wanted them as a buffer against the Indians. They were not about to pay for that, okay. So the leader of these rebels kind of emerged as again Nathaniel Bacon, who you see here. You can definitely see him pretty affluent, very well dressed. Okay, he's clearly a gentleman. That's why he emerges as a leader. But he's only 29 years old. All right, so pretty young, especially for today's standards, to be a leader. Okay, and the other side, and the other piece you read over the weekend, is Sir William Berkeley. He's the governor of Colonial Virginia, and essentially he doesn't want to defend against the Indians because he doesn't want to pay for it, nor does he want to. Nor do the people want to go out west to support these lowly indentured servants that went out and took this land out in the backcountry. Okay, so Berkeley wanted to have peace with the Indians. Okay, he figured let's get along with these people. We won't have to worry about it. It's going to be living more in peace and harmony. Bacon wanted to assimilate them into the European culture. Okay, assimilate means to help people blend in and help them merge into the culture of society. We're going to see that word a lot in this class, so this will be a great word to appear on the word wall Mondays. In fact, I will give extra points, a couple extra points in Monday's debate to the first student who has assimilate on the word wall in class on Monday. Okay, and Bacon also wants a greater voice in the House of Burgesses, which we know is Virginia's elected legislature. Okay, he's arguing that we need a voice to defend protect ourselves because we're kind of outvoted by these rich, wealthy people on the coast. So Bacon marched on Jamestown. Why Jamestown? Because it was the capital. Okay, so he kind of marches in protest and burns the town to the ground. All right, and then he plunders all the property of the Berkeley supporters to try and get their attention, to sort of force some action to get them to protect them. It's kind of weird to think of it that way, but if you can burn their stuff down, then they might try to work with you and appease you for your actions. All right, but the rebellion phases out when Bacon dies of dysentery, which is a fancy word for diarrhea. All right, we'll talk about that in class a little bit more. And 23 of his followers were captured by Berkeley and hanged. Okay, so the rebellion was unsuccessful in its initial goal of getting the financial support and protection from the Virginia legislature, okay, and they were obviously killed. And this is what is left of that Capitol that was burned in Jamestown. You can just see the outskirts of the foundation of the building, but that's what Mr. Bacon and his followers burned to the ground back in the 1676. Okay, so this is now after Bacon's rebellion. All right, you'll notice, all right, how many slaves we have versus indentured servants. Okay, we're up to 278,000 slaves brought from Africa. Okay, and then indentured servants, you'll see a good chunk from Ireland. Okay, a little bit from England, not too many from Scotland. And Germany has a big number as well. Okay, so we see a decline in indentured servants, but an increase in slaves, which is your main effect of that. Okay, so it led to an increase in the slave trade because the rich planters realized we don't want to rely on these indentured servants because, yes, we have to give them land, and then their contracts run up, and then we have to go bring more over. It's not very economically efficient, and if we have to protect them too. Okay, so it became very costly, and with them being unruly, Virginia decided they were going to use a lot less indentured servants and more slave labor. Okay, and then tobacco prices start to rise there in the 1680s. Okay, as more and more labor sources and more tobacco farms come into production. All right, so thank you for listening to your initial installment of the Kuhn Academy. If you have any questions, you can bring them to class on Monday. Remember, we're not just learning history here at the Kuhn Academy, we're making history. All right, so as Mr. Berkeley said, I think something bad's about to happen.
Up to the church, but I got sound. Had to back it on.